All right, Nick, let's talk about the Florida Gators. We are fresh into whatever you want to call it, fall camp, training camp, where it right be about in the thick of football is what we're really in. And we're seeing some guys really kind of start to step up on this Florida Gators team. Some guys that maybe been sliding under the radar a little bit, haven't really peeked their heads up, but are now starting to make some noise, make a big name for himself. I think the Gators fans are going to love this one. But before we dive into all of that, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, one Florida Gator in particular is really starting to make some noise in camp, showing that he wasn't just a guy that slid under the radar last year and was going to fade into oblivion. He is now making himself known. This is going to be a guy who could really bring some much needed explosiveness to this Florida team. Let's get into the article and we can talk more about it on the other side. Says from SI.com, says, while the talk of fall camp has continued to focus around Dallas Wilson, J. Michael Sturdivant, and Eugene Wilson III, and even Aiden Mazzell, one name has constantly been ignored despite stacking impressive days. Through flying under the radar, Napier and staff are paying attention. He says, man, I like Tank Hawkins, wide receiver who we're talking about. Napier said Monday. I think we saw that in the back half of the year and in spring. He just kept putting good routes on tape. I think the skill level has improved. Tank's had a good couple of days. He had a nice day in the stadium the other day, caught a good couple of balls, a good day today. We need Tank to come alive here to create some depth in that room, Napier said. Talk about wide receiver room. He says he can create explosive plays. We're talking a 10.3 second 100-meter dash. He plays fast, so we need him to keep bringing that toughness and that detail into his route running. That sounds really great to me as far as Tank Hawkins, a guy, talk about playing fast, talking about explosive plays that he can create, can really help this Florida team get to the next level. Because while I'll say they weren't bad at explosive plays by any means, they're a slightly below average at average. This could be a guy that gets them over the edge. So that brings me to our next chart here. We can look at this on the left-hand side. The vertical axis, you can see explosive plays. Bottom, you see offensive snaps. You see Florida there at the bottom left quadrant, slightly below average, but they don't have a ton of offensive snaps as well. And I think having a guy here like Hawkins really going to help elevate them up into that upper quadrant. You see some of the other teams that are probably the most impressive, the Ohio States, the Miami's, teams that have a lot of explosive plays, but aren't quite like Texas when they're all the way to the right because they're a ton of offensive snaps as well. Texas in its own right is very impressive for the, just the kind of mass amount of explosive plays they had, but still they ran a lot of plays on offense. But Florida, I think they can elevate themselves a little bit more to help get them in that elite echelon of teams that are making explosive plays. And as you can see on this chart, the teams in that upper right quadrant, those are the good teams. This is where you want to be. You want to be like Penn State. You want to be like Oregon. Yeah, Georgia's even worked in there. You want to be like Ohio State, Miami, Texas. Those are the teams competing for national championships. And I think Florida can get there. A guy like Hawkins, I think, can come in and really help this elevate this team. Really start to get some more explosive plays on paper and help this offense. Because I think once we saw the quarterback switch at Florida, we saw what was possible. But maybe we didn't have the whole offense under tow yet. Maybe this whole offensive experience at Florida is a little bit underdeveloped. Now we're trying to get some guys in here that can really kind of come in and help out and make this offense top tier. I think Hawkins can be one of those guys. And I think the Florida Gators are about to explode onto the page in the explosive play department. Curious what your thoughts are on all of this, Nick. But before we get to you, Gators fans, in the comment section below, talk about guys who made explosive plays. Let's even, make it a little bit wider. Doesn't got to be a wide receiver. Could be a running back. Could be a tight end as well. There's some guys come to recent memory who've been very explosive at that position as well. So let us know in the comment section below, who's your favorite big play threat in Florida history? A lot of good names, a lot of good players have come through Florida. Might be a tough decision, but make sure to let us know in the comments below, who's your favorite big play threat in Gators history in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on everything here for the Gators?
Look, anything you can do to make DJ Lagway give another weapon, and obviously the injury concerns coming into camp, they seem a little bit better now, although it's kind of an ongoing story. Doesn't seem to be anything lagging, but definitely something to keep an eye on. Anything, though, you can give him weapons, playmakers to help him out is obviously critically important. Surrounding him with everything he needs to develop into the superstar, which we all think he is going to be this season and beyond for the Florida Gators. But it's also important to understand as a team, as a roster, the Florida Gators are going to be very big play dependent in 2025 just by the structure. If you look at the numbers, just look at the data. So I looked at ESPN's Football Power Index FPI. And basically, what they do is they look at the quality of your roster based on what you've done in previous years. They kind of leave recruiting and some of the coaching tactical stuff out of it. It's just a roster quality metric. And it's not perfect, but I think it's a good snapshot to see top to bottom across the offense, across the defense, how talented and deep you are as a roster. And in the SEC, the Florida Gators rank 11th in FPI. Now, the good news is if you look at them 11th in the SEC, they're 18th in the country. So, again, it speaks to how good the SEC is and the depth of the conference. But I think the reality is number 11 in the SEC is not where you want to end up being ranked, obviously, if you're a Florida fan. So, how do you overcome in terms of having your talent and your depth of your roster outside the top 10 of your conference? Easy, big plays, right? You have to generate explosive plays. You're not going to have the talent of another team, at least on paper, to go 4 yards, 6 yards, 7 yards, 5 yards, 7 yards, 6 yards, right? You're not going to have the talent that some, a Texas might or Georgia might or a team like that that has more of the just a deeper roster. But how do you overcome that? Big plays, explosive plays, right? They may get you on first down. They may stuff the run for a yard on first down. They may get pressure on Lagway on second down. You get to third and 9, but then you get a 50-yard completion down the field. And heck, who cares, right? You only won one of the 3 plays, but the one you won was a huge play. That's going to be the strategy for Florida this season. And it comes down to these kind of guys, like you mentioned here, emerging, just really coming into their own as part of the Florida Gators offense as a whole. It can't be just one or two guys. They're going to need a cadre of big playmakers across the board. They've had some good guys through the recruiting class, some young guys, like you mentioned, coming up in the fold as well. But when you look at this Florida Gators offense and as a team, they are going to live and die by the big play. Now, the good news is it means it's going to be pretty fun, pretty exciting. The bad news is it's going to be pretty volatile, Florida fans, so you're going to have to learn to live with that. I think you're going to have a game or two that you're going to lose that you should win because of that, but I think you're also going to upset some people. And if you look at the Florida Gators schedule heading into the 2025, there's actually a lot of opportunities here, right? I think you go to Ole Miss, you go to A&M, go to Miami. Those are good opportunities for upsets, right? You look across their schedule. Home against Georgia could be interesting. I think at LSU and home against Texas are tough, but there's an opportunity there. You get Tennessee at home, Tennessee, new quarterback. I'm not 100% sold on them. You look at the schedule, you look at the situation for Florida. If you're able to generate enough big plays and ride that wave of motion and volatility, you could get to 10-2, right? It ain't going to be easy, right? There's going to be a lot of ups and downs, and you're probably going to have one or two ugly losses. Of those two, you may get to 9-3 and sneak into the college football playoff like that. That's an option as well. But if you can execute with your big plays and generate that kind of consistent offense, remember, DJ Lagway did a lot of that last season for their offense in terms of generating big plays when he got more of his playing time. So it fits into his style as well. Across the board, this Florida team is going to live and die by the vertical passing attack. We see a lot of teams in modern college football kind of go to the ball control West Coast offense, not necessarily air raid in terms of throwing it 70 times a game, but when they throw it, it's short, it's methodical, it's yards after catch, it's things like that. It's almost like Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers' offense, if you want an NFL comparison. I look at DJ Lagway, a lot more Patrick Mahomes, early Patrick Mahomes for the Kansas City Chiefs, very vertical, very explosive, generating big plays. Rely on your athleticism and the athleticism of your young wide receivers and playmakers. I expect DJ Lagway to have a monster season because of that by itself. The volume, the highlights will look absolutely outstanding. And I think these Florida Gators playmakers emerging from the woodwork to becoming these big play machines is exactly what Florida needs. And again, Gators fans, you're going to have to learn to embrace it. There's going to be some ugly series. There's going to be some ugly games, but there's going to be a lot of high flying and a lot of scoring because of it. And I think it goes back as far as this whole strategy centered around DJ Lagway.
Yeah, Nick, and I think as we've covered Florida the last, few months, we've gone over their recruiting prowess and how they've done a lot of really good stuff. And I think one thing that explosive plays does is, like you said, you don't necessarily have the depth a lot of these guys do. You don't have some of the talent because you're working on it. You're getting it there. You're building. You're doing a lot of good things this past and recruiting cycle and 2026 cycle as well. We're starting to see some progress being made on that front. But explosive plays is something that kind of like fills the gaps in a little bit. when you don't have necessarily, the depth or the ability on offense to get, 4, 3, 4, 5 yards every single play, keep the chains moving. It's like you said, you can lose 3 plays. All you need is one explosive play to really get you a new set of downs, keep the chains rolling, keep things going. So that's something I think is going to be important. As Florida has grown in the recruiting game, I think they're going to be towards that Ohio State, towards that Texas, the Oregons of the world. They're going to be there very soon, but they're going to need another year, another 2 years to really keep this high level of recruiting going that Billy Napier's been able to do the last few months. Keep that going. Explosive plays can be the thing that helps them win now. And the more you win, the better that flywheel effect of going and getting better recruits is going to help as well. So while explosive plays may seem like a crazy stat, something that you think, how's that actually going to even, translate to anything? It all comes back to the same thing. Explosive plays, more wins, better recruits, more recruiting, more talent on the roster. Again, more explosive plays, more wins. Everything is cyclical. It's going to come back together on itself. So I think it's going to be a big move for the Gators. I think we're going to start to see some really impressive stuff happen on Saturdays.
Yeah, and I was trying to look at the stat while I was talking. So DJ Lagway last year, just to put a bow on this, averaged 10 yards per passing attempt. That 10.0 is sort of that magical threshold of being a big play offense or not, right? And that once you hit that 10 handle or higher, hey, that's a sign you're throwing the football down the field and you're throwing it down the field with authority and consistency. And that's what Florida was last year with the younger Lagway. We'll see what they're going to be this year, probably much more like that. And Tank Hawkins, interestingly enough, if you look at his recruiting profile coming out of high school, I'll just read the first 3 words on his profile: a verified burner. This is a playmaker. This is what he was coming out of school. This is what he was supposed to be when it came to the Florida Gators, and this is what he will be for Florida this season, along with the other receivers mentioned, and along with the rest of the cadre of playmakers around Lagway. This is going to be, I'm going to say it now, I'm going to say it again. This is going to be a high-flying offense, big plays. It's going to be very reminiscent. I know Florida fans may not like this, of Josh Heupel's Tennessee teams, hyper aggressive, throwing the ball down the field, generating a lot of offense, scoring in like 2 or 3 plays. That's what Florida's going to be like this season as they, to your point, get more of that talent pipeline recruiting. Eventually, they'll go away from that, right? No one wants to be that long term. They'll eventually work away from that, like you alluded to. That is a phenomenal point to bring up. But this year, in the short term, in the interim, they're going to be an explosive offense. They're going to need these young guys to step up. That's why it's such a good sign that Napier's high on them. It means that he believes they're ready, Lagway believes they're ready, and it looks like we're all going to be ready for a very explosive Florida offense.